One of Australia's most respected politicians, renowned for his support for environmental issues, human rights issues, Senator Bob Brown.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I woke this morning to be told that the caption on the letters page under the advertisement in today's Australian is "Brown Mongrel." Now, it's not my job to be a mongrel here today on our opponents, but you've already heard them concede in good measure. Firstly, Kate said that the problem in the media is that the corruption lies at the top. Well, I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, if you go to study a church and its morality, do you look at the altar boy or do you study the bishop? Speaking of which, what's the difference between an Australian abattoir, an Australian brothel and an Australian newspaper? You need a licence for both of the first, too. You don't need a licence for an Australian newspaper. Now, I contend that this argument about whether the media is moral or not, of course there are moral people in the media. But the real argument is, does the media use its extraordinary power as the fourth estate morally? And that is in the hands of those who control, the unlicensed men who control the media. And the answer is, no, they do not act with morality, nor do they uphold their own media ethics, for goodness sake, that thou shalt not, in their own media lineup, invade the privacy of grieving people, or you shall not beguile the innocent with media trickery. Staple components of the media lineup which are breached day in and day out. Look at who controls or owns media around the world. Silvio Berlusconi, Robert Mugabe. What about then Rupert Murdoch, companion of the Order of Australia, knighthood of the Holy See in the Order of St Gregory the Great, whose paper called me Brown Mongrel today. Rupert said this about me and us. You tell these bloody politicians whatever they want to hear. And once the deal is done, you don't worry about it. They're not going to chase after you later if they suddenly decide what you said wasn't what they wanted to hear. Otherwise, they're made to look bad, and they can't abide that. So they just stick their heads up their asses and wait for the blow to pass. That's the most powerful media personage on the planet, talking about the elected representatives of the democracies in which he works his wonders to behold. Seriously, ladies and gentlemen, how can we, with that ethic at play, presume other than the media has no morals? Oscar Wilde said, in olden times they had the rack, nowadays they have the press. Well, the King or the Crown licensed the rack. It's time the Crown licensed the press as well. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
He's a highly respected lawyer, a patron of the arts and a defender of human rights, Julian Burnside, QC.
I have to start by reminding you what the topic actually is. When I say reminding you, I mean reminding our friends on the right. The topic is that the media have no morals. Now, it's important that it is such an extreme position because what they've done is to pick examples, and some powerful and very entertaining examples, of the media behaving badly. And any of us can do that, and I would agree with pretty much everything they said except the conclusion they drew. Let's think about a couple of examples which directly contradict that proposition. Remember Edward R. Murrow in 1954, who brought down the appalling campaign of Senator Joseph McCarthy by a simple proposition to him, "Have you no shame?" By his bravery as a television journalist, he managed to bring to a halt the juggernaut of anti-communist persecution in the United States of America. No mean effort in those days. And remember, some several decades later, who told us about Watergate? Oh, that would be the press, wouldn't it? Some extraordinarily talented journalists taking great risks, doing everything that was necessary in order to break probably one of the greatest stories of the 20th century. We would have known nothing about it except for the press. More recently, of course, as you've heard, Nick Davies in The Guardian relentlessly pursued the phone hacking story, which every other part of society had basically ignored or given up on. It was the press that told us about it. And there's an interesting thing. Here's one part of the press exposing the shortcomings of another part of the press. Now, Stephen Mayne, now he's another great journalist. Stephen has done great journalism for decades in this country. And here he is saying the media have no morals. As long as Stephen is amongst them, you can say the media do have some morals, and thank goodness for him. And Mona Eltahawy. Mona is one of the really great journalists. She is really one of the great and brave journalists in the world. You may think I'm being flippant. I'm not. Now, it may not be a fashionable or popular thing to say that there are people who are great in their area. But these two, together, each of these two together, tell us why it is that you can't say the media have no morals. And I hope that they are with us for a long time to come. And by the way, she recognises that too, because she argued our case. You know, remember, her argument really was an argument in support of our case. It is true, and I think the examples given by our opponents make this clear, it is true that standards in the press could improve. Standards in the media generally could improve. But the few examples that I've given you, those are all examples of the media at their best. And what the other side have done is simply give us some examples of the media at their worst. Surely what we need to do is to encourage the best and to drive out the worst, so that in 5 or 10 or 15 years from now you won't see brown mongrel as a headline, and you won't see the sort of gross misreporting and distortions that we've seen in relation to climate change, refugees, and the list goes on. In 5 or 10 years, if we insist on the highest standards that we know the media can produce, then no one will ever even bother asking or suggesting that the media have no morals, because they have a strong moral foundation, and we can encourage them all to be the best. Thank you.
Well, we've heard from our speakers, and in a moment there'll be an opportunity for you in the audience to contribute to this debate. But before we do, I'm just going to recall that we had a poll of your opinions before you heard a single word of this debate. As things stand, it's 58.4% for the motion, 17.8% against, but there is 23.8% of the audience here who is still undecided. And so you may have changed already based on what you've heard, but now's the opportunity for you in the audience to ask questions or make comments, and we'll see how that sways the debate as we move forward. Remember, as we move to the end of the debate, you'll be asked to cast your ballot, so that's still to come. So I'm going to start off with microphone 2, which seems to have the largest group.
But can I suggest that flexible morality is no morality? And evidence of absence is not the same as absence of evidence. So can I suggest that although you've been able to tell us a lot of the good things that the media have done for us, There is a great big gap. What about the things we don't know that the media haven't done for us? What Rumsfeld is famous for referring to as the unknown unknowns.
Thank you. Okay, microphone 3.
Interested. Julian Burnside's final point there was that the for and against have shown us examples of the media being good, the media being bad, and that therefore we should think that the media, some elements of the media have morals. The issue I think there that he hasn't addressed is the balance of power in those morals, where you have examples of the media doing good things that are overwhelmed by examples of the media doing bad things. I'm not decided on this debate, and I'm unsure as to where you think that means in terms of whether some part of the media having morals matters.
Microphone 4, your name please.
It's Catherine Courts. You mentioned that the media is kind of owned by multi-billion-dollar companies. I was just wondering how you separate yourself from publishers' financial concerns when it comes to upholding your own moral compass and integrity.
And who are you directing that question to?
Anyone.
Anyone. Okay, so it's a general question. Well, let's start with you, Hamish.
Well, the first question was about the unknown unknowns, I think. Well, yes, if anyone has any tip-offs, I will happily receive them. I guess the point is that I think, in answer to that question, also the one about the media balance of power, you know, it is a struggle. But ultimately, it's not the journalists that decide who wins this struggle, it's you. It's audiences that have to vote, ultimately, about whether the Jedis win or whether the Siths win, you know?
Yeah, but Hamish, I think the point that came from that first question was, on balance, you can give 1 or 2 examples of good things. You may be able to give a lot, but the gentleman was saying there are such serious things on the other side that it overwhelms your argument. I just wonder if you want to address his point on that.
Well, I just don't think that it is overwhelmed. I think, particularly in this day and age, particularly with social and digital media playing such a pivotal role and having such influence on traditional media, I think it is impossible for whatever organisation it is, whether it be News International or News Corps or Al Jazeera, to totally dominate the landscape. And so I think that ultimately the truth can and should and will win out.
And Julian, on the...
Yeah, I thought the question about balance was a very good one, and I want to answer it this way. If you want to test that question, imagine for a moment all the media are shut down. The good, the bad, the indifferent, all of them shut down, full stop. Are we better off or worse off? I would say we're unquestionably worse off. And that, I think, is the answer to the question.
An answer to the question up there about what do journalists do. You know, if the top is corrupt, are all the journalists underneath, what do they do? Well, you can look around the world at dictatorships. You can find people who are put in jail, they're tortured, they're imprisoned for lengthy periods just because of what they wrote against the people in power. Journalists just go on. And you have to be in support of this. You can't say that journalists give up. The statistics worldwide for the injuries and the imprisonments and the deaths of journalists is actually, they're going up. And it's because journalism keeps on going. Otherwise, they just go off and they'd be chartered accountants. They determinedly have to keep at it.
Thank you. And apology to all the chartered accountants in the audience. Microphone 4, your name, please.
Hello, my name's Primos. I just had a point of clarification for Senator Brown. Earlier you mentioned something about a licensing scheme for the media. Are you seriously suggesting that the government start controlling the media, which is basically what would happen there?
Okay, we'll come back to that and we'll get a response. Microphone 3.
Hi, my name's Sam Wallace. I was asking, the negative throughout their whole line gave a lot of examples of good things the media has done. I was going to ask, is this an indication that the media have morals, or is this just an indication that stories that breaking them has a positive effect also sell papers and doesn't just show a commitment and doesn't just show a commitment to money, which is, I suppose a commitment to money which is shown by their breaking of bad stories that have a negative effect.
Okay, and microphone 2.
I'm a young person and I use a lot of social media. How does social media actually affect the morals of media?
People have made huge sacrifices to have freedom of expression and freedom of the press, and the import of the question to you was that you would curb that with a regulatory framework which licenses the media. Is that what you have in mind?
No, of course it's not. Barristers are licensed, so are nurses. Nurses are 95% in public esteem in Australia. The media's at 11%. The media's own code of ethics is a good one. And for the sake of good journalists, ought not we have a system which says that those who are bad, who do the wrong thing, who are the bad eggs, and that includes the owners, have some point of reference which pulls them up in their track. It applies to everybody else, so why not to the media? I don't think licensing, frankly, will make much difference. But I do think upholding its own code of ethics would make the media much more popular than it is here and elsewhere around the world.
Kate?
Can I take the social media question?
Sorry, yeah, please.
Yeah, I think social media are beginning a very interesting kind of adventure, a dance of sorts with mainstream media. I think what social media are doing is, you know, I was a mainstream journalist for years. 9/11 for me killed objectivity and I became a columnist. And I think what social media are doing is they are putting out this idea, they're killing this notion that there's such a thing as objectivity, and they are removing this mask. I mean, Fox News unashamedly serves out opinion that masquerades as news. We can call it what it is, it's opinion, it's not news.
Okay, thank you. Kate Adie, one of the implications of the question about good stories and bad stories is that the criteria against which stories are being selected is simply what sells, rather than a conscious ethical judgment, if you like, about what ought or ought not to be told. I mean, how do you relate to that comment?
We're not living in the unreal world. In the real world, what sells is scandal, gossip, sleaze, sensation, and sport. So what you really need is a sleazy footballer and a sex scandal. And it will sell a huge amount more than a story about refugees who are being denied human rights. A huge amount. Everybody knows that. The point is that the people who consume this give the profits to the powerful people who run this agenda. We can all worry about drowning in a pool of sleaze, but it's a pool of our own making if we don't get off our butts and do something.
One final comment from you, Stephen, before I go back to the floor, but I'd particularly like you to pick up on this notion that we, the audience, the consumers, are ultimately responsible for the garbage.
No, look, I disagree with that. You don't offer up rubbish if it's toxic and damaging. You have a responsibility of the media to not shout fire in a cinema and to not do those sorts of inflammatory things. And the media is so desperate for scoops and ratings that they have a callous disregard for the damage that many of their stories do.
Okay. Microphone 4, please.
Hi, I'm Kim. I'm from Queensland. I'd just like to ask if perhaps some of the solution would be to create some new media outlets, because in Queensland all the papers are owned by Murdoch. And I was a journalism student. I've decided not to follow that career path, perhaps because of the topic of this debate. So I think maybe part of the solution is to create some new outlets, new voices. I don't know, what do you guys think?
Microphone 2.
My name's Nat. I've actually got a really simple question, which is, what is the media? The people in the affirmative have told us that it's Rupert Murdoch, and the people in the negative have told us it's individual journalists. So, yeah, what is the media? Is it the CEO, is it journalists, or is it us who consumes it?
And microphone 4.
Much of the debate tonight has focused on the large multi-billion-dollar corporations who own and run the media, the Packers, the Murdochs. I just find it really interesting that the one big company that hasn't been mentioned is Fairfax, who owns the Sydney Morning Herald, who is actually a sponsor of the debate tonight. So I'm wondering, first of all, is it moral at all to have a debate about whether the media have no morals when the media actually sponsor the debate? And why haven't Fairfax been mentioned tonight? Have you guys been asked not to mention them?
Just to clarify, Fairfax is a media partner, which means they carry information about it. They're not actually sponsoring it in the sense in which we suggested. But, so for full disclosure, that is the nature of the relationship. As far as I know, no one here has been asked by Fairfax not to mention them. Unless you have, no? Stephen Mayne.